Hello, everyone. I'm Sudeep Charles, and I head product marketing for Chef Desktop. With me today are Chaitra, who leads the product management for this product, as well as Rishi from our engineering team, right? So over the next hour today, we'll cover an overview of endpoints and how you can manage endpoint status code. We'll see how this paradigm can be orchestrated with Chef Desktop. And of course, the benefits that you can derive from this approach, right? So with that said, let's get to it. So Gartner has said that by the end of 21, 51% of all knowledge workers worldwide are expected to work remotely, right? And this is a significant number. It's up from about 27% of knowledge workers from 2019, right? So it also estimates that remote workers will represent about 32% of employees worldwide by the end of this year, right? So, and that if you contrast that to 2019, that was 17%. So it's almost double, right? And so the point here being that there are enough drivers for endpoints to be fairly distributed, right? And it is happening even as we speak. 30% of cloud budgets were not utilized completely over the last year, right? And what has happened as a result is that organizations are looking to streamline cloud costs, optimize cloud services, right? And organizations are over budget for cloud spends by an average of 23%, given these rather reduced numbers. The reality of also security today is that security leaders have got far too many tools. And this is again a Gartner finding after interviewing multiple CISOs in a survey that 78% said that they have 16 or more tools just to figure out the posture of the organization. 12% said that they have 46 tools or more, right? That's a significant number. Too many security vendors essentially results in a complexity of security operations, but that's not what we're talking about today, right? What is more important is there is no real easy way for you to be able to get a sense of this final state of your endpoints, just given all of these tools that are trying to get different portions of the puzzle together, right? So there are enough drivers in terms of just the distribution of workforce and a lack of endpoint management tools that give you a holistic view of how your endpoints are, what state they are in, right? And that's essentially what drives the need for something like this. Now, quick primer, if you want, on endpoints, right? So endpoints include servers and desktops and laptops, even encompass cloud infrastructure as well as network devices, right? Common examples would include, like I said, kiosks, servers, laptops, desktops. And organizations accomplish desktop or endpoint management by deploying software solutions that help them discover and manage all those devices in their IT environment, right? So endpoint management tools essentially help ensure that systems and applications are running on a high availability and they're running the way that they were configured to. Asset management, IT automation, remote endpoint management, patch management, all of these are critical functions of endpoint management tools, right? And the comprehensive endpoint management solution will also help you gain visibility and control of your entire IT environment. It helps essentially IT teams to identify, troubleshoot, and even resolve IT incidents, right? And do that very fast and help maintain system availability, right? It also helps you, in effect, maintain your fleet in compliance and ensure that those devices are compliant. And if they're not, you could also trigger remediations to ensure that compliance continues over time, right? So that's a quick summary of what endpoint management is and the functionality of these tools. So all this is great, but how does Chef fit in, right? Chef is a configuration management solution that makes codifying and pushing endpoints to the Chef server very simple, right? So essentially the Chef client runs on laptops or desktops or kiosks on a regular basis, downloads configuration from a Chef server and restores devices to their ideal or their configured state if there is a drift in configuration, right? How do you do this? Well, through cookbooks, right? And cookbooks are Chef artifacts in which configurations are codified, they're specified as code. And Chef provides resources which are basically code abstractions that may be used to easily configure these end user machines, right? So Chef resources are more legible, if you will. They're more versatile than anything that you can do even with a GUI or even with scripting, right? And because the code that you are able to then manage is version controlled, all modifications to cookbooks are then thoroughly vetted and verified before they're even deployed onto end user laptops and those fleets. So if there is a requirement to roll back these changes if necessary, that can be done really quickly as well, right? And that is the secret sauce of Chef in terms of what endpoint management is, if you will. Well, how does it help? I'm going to let you go through the slide overall, but essentially it's comprehensive visibility, rapid continuous endpoint discovery, precise software configuration, inventory of your assets. All of that is easy to do. There's ease of management. It's reliable. It's consistent. Both in terms of being able to update and to verify those updates. And there's, of course, automated software provisioning that you can do. There's, of course, continuous security hygiene that you can maintain, just given the nature of what I said in terms of just configuring, making sure that devices are compliant, and also ensuring that regulatory policies and regimes that you need to comply with are also complied with, right? So all of that is great, but the cherry on this cake essentially is that single pane of glass visibility that you get across operating systems, this irrespective of the kind of clusters or the kind of fleets that you have, whether they're operating on Mac OSs or they're operating on Windows systems or even Linux systems, right? You're still across these clusters, you'll still be able to get a single pane of glass visibility to the entire fleet. Well, the benefits, I think, are fairly self-explanatory. There's fine-grained control and flexibility. There's very limited manual intervention. There's a broad OS coverage. Of course, all of this leads to increased visibility. If there are drifts, you're going to be able to remediate them really quickly. So there's quick remediation as well. And all of this cumulatively leads to increased productivity, right? It's faster to fix or to detect issues, fix them, and get end user devices back to where they need to be, right? So quick number just in terms of what endpoints are, how do we fit in, and what you can get as a result of managing your endpoints is code. Now, with that, Chaitra will take you through some of the detail that, and how we do it from a Chef perspective. But before we do that, you'll see a poll question that pops up. Do take the time to respond to this, and we'll discuss some of these answers at the end of the webinar. But with that, I'll hand it off to Chaitra.
Thanks, Sudeep.
Sure.
Yeah. So, taking forward from where Sudeep left off, right? So let us start with, what are the different aspects of managing your laptops and desktops in your organization, right? So there is, device enrollments that you have to take care, and then you have to configure different settings and preferences on your end user laptops. Like, say, you may want to enable or disable firewall, or you may want to set screensaver or wallpaper, or, you may want to disable your users from using some external hard drives or things like that, right? And then there are aspects like managing applications, updating these applications on a regular basis whenever there are updates, and then remotely wiping and locking devices whenever device is lost, or if an employee leaves the organization, you might want to wipe these devices and repurpose them for new employees. And again, OS patching, right? So you would want to make sure that all the laptops in your fleet are updated with the latest operating system, because in addition to configuring and managing your devices, you would also want to ensure that your fleet is compliant and that your fleet is secure, and there are no security risks or vulnerabilities that you would have to face, right? So these are the different aspects of managing endpoints. And why do you need tools for managing endpoints, right? So apart from having different aspects to managing endpoints, there is always scale. So as your organizations grow, the number of devices, the number of laptops and desktops in your fleet also scale, right? So with scale, the need for visibility and the need for continuous compliance and frequent and regular OS and application upgrade becomes very important. And getting a visibility into where your fleet stands, what is the state of the fleet, and the health of your fleet. These are something which you would want to have grip over. And as you have more and more business functions in your organizations, the number of customized configurations that you perform, that also would increase. You would have different departments and different needs, so you would have to take care of that as well. And then we have organizations with geographically distributed teams. And with remote work, we have most of the employee laptops in different networks and different locations. So making sure that these employee laptops are managed even from a different location without any IT admin's intervention would require zero touch enrollment. Right. So this is where MDMs and UEMs started coming into use to manage all these aspects of managing end user laptops and desktops. So with managing endpoints, there are with MDMs and UEMs, there are many advantages. Like these solutions are suitable for both large and small scale businesses. And then many of them provide both cloud and on-prem options. And they are also very user intuitive. They have a good user interface. So even a new person probably who joins can start using them and creating policies and configuring settings. And then they also provide you dashboard to visualize your fleet and understand the health of your fleet. While there are some advantages, with MDMs and UMs, there are also certain gaps with managing endpoints. And let's talk about these gaps, right? So although GUI is good, it's very user intuitive, but then it can also get really confusing, right? Because there are a lot of different menus and a lot of different options you have to choose from. So configuring a certain workflow would make you have to go through different menus and options, and are riddled behind these menus and sub menus, right, which can get very confusing. And it can even be very error prone also. Like you might end up configuring something which you did not intend to, or if it is, if the workflow that you configured causes some issues, it is not very easy to find out and debug through set so many policies and so many configuration tasks and flows that you have set in your MDMs. So that becomes really challenging. And you can imagine that with scale, right, that gets even more difficult to get a handle over. And then most of the IT administrators use different OS and application patch management tools. They integrate it with MDMs because OS and patch management is not very optimal with the MDMs these days. And then there are many features which are sometimes not available out of the box in the MDM UI. So to complete some of the laptop management workflows, IT administrators have to resort to writing scripts, which are typically uploaded to MDM. So and then with scripts, again, you have to write different scripts for different OSs, and then there are challenges with scripting as well, right? So talking more about problems with the managing endpoints with the in the state that it is today. Like Sudeep mentioned, right? I want to reiterate over that there are multiple tools today to manage your entire endpoint managed, right? So there are, apart from the MDM and UEM tools, people tend to have security management tools, and then vulnerability and remediation tools. And then all these have to be integrated with your MDMs and UEMs. And there sometimes can be issues with the integration as well, right? And then most of these are point and click GUI based solutions, which could be, error prone, and it could end up in unintended consequences. And then since all these are manual and UI based tasks, there is a lack of audit trail as well. So you don't know what change somebody did, when it was done, and why it was done. So again, debugging issues get really difficult. And if there is something, some change that you rolled out that you did not want to do, then again, rolling back those changes are also not easy. And while people use scripts to not just get around features which are not available out of the box, it is also used as an automation solution over MDMs. It can be used, but then there are many challenges with it, right? You have to use different scripts for Windows, like you have to use PowerShell scripts for Windows, and then you have to use Bash scripts for Mac. So it becomes a lot of lengthy and repetitive scripting, and there is no standard way of managing the scripts today, right? So that's where scripting is not a very optimal solution to automate your endpoint management tasks. So how do you optimize this, right? If you codify your endpoint management, then that could solve many of your problems. So why codify your endpoint fleet, right? Because when you codify your endpoint management fleet, you make sure that you follow a software development lifecycle process. All the configurations that you specify as code is pushed to a source code management repository like GitHub, and then from there a CI/CD pipeline is triggered. And every configuration change or every configuration that you specify as code is peer reviewed by your team. So you can make sure that every change that you do is well vetted and tested before it is deployed onto production. And then there is also ability to roll back changes. And with the GUI based tasks that you do on MDMs, you have to document everything that you do, because then if you have a new member in your team, he needs to know what are the workflows which are already in place. But in case of if you codify your fleet, then the code itself is way of documenting what are the workflows and what are the steps that have been taken to manage your endpoints. And you can codify your endpoint fleet with configuration management tools like Chef, which provides code abstractions. So code abstractions are provided in the form of resources in Chef, which takes care of all the underlying tasks and commands. And all you need to do is pass a few parameters, and then it takes care of all the underlying tasks, which makes these code abstractions very easy to read and write. And even with little code knowledge, you can get started. And then Chef also provides premium content in the form of cookbooks. So these usually have the most common endpoint management workflows defined in them, and you can get started with them. You can also write your own content. And then in addition to this premium content, there is also a huge community in Chef. So you can also reuse community content for your purpose. You can use them as it is, or you can customize them to your needs, and you can start using them to manage your endpoint status code. And then Chef also provides support to multiple operating systems. So you can use Chef to manage your Windows, Mac, and Linux fleet. So let me show a high-level overview of how you can use Chef along with MDM to manage your endpoints. So typically, you would use your MDM to enroll your devices, to do zero-touch enrollment, and remotely wipe or lock devices in case of lost or stolen devices. And then you would also deploy Chef client via an MDM. So once you have your Chef client deployed on your fleet, from then on, Chef would take over, and all the configurations that you define as code that are pushed to the Chef server are pulled by these Chef clients onto the fleet, and these configurations are applied onto the fleet. Right. So taking you through only the Chef part of the workflow. So typically IT admins would write their configurations in Chef artifacts called cookbooks. So cookbooks are where you generally define your configurations as code, which is pushed to a source code management repository like GitHub. And from there, a CI/CD pipeline would be triggered, and the cookbooks are pushed to the Chef server. So these cookbooks, before deploying onto your actual end user fleet, they can be tested on test environments, and you could have a staging environment where you could run them, right? So the Chef client, which are deployed on the fleet via an MDM, these pull the configurations from the chef server, and all the configurations specified in the cookbook are applied onto the fleet. And let's just say, one of the configurations that you applied on some of the laptops got corrupted, or some of the users got creative and managed to change these configurations. So how do you ensure compliance, or how do you ensure that these devices stay in the desired state? That's where Chef plays, right? So you have these Chef clients installed on each of the laptops or desktops on your fleet, and these can be scheduled to run at a particular frequency and different periods. And so the next time Chef client runs on your device, it would pull the original cookbook from the Chef server and apply the configurations again, so that you can ensure that your devices stay in the desired state. So with Chef, you can achieve automation and automatic drift correction, in addition to which you can also achieve continuous compliance. You can write compliance checks to check whether your fleet is compliant, and if there are any devices which are not as per the compliance standards, then you can deploy remediation cookbooks which would automatically remediate your devices back to the compliant state. So let me take you through some of the Chef artifacts, right? So a Chef repository can have multiple cookbooks, right? So cookbook contains a collection of recipes, and recipe is where you would define your endpoint configurations. And then you would want to run a bunch of recipes or a bunch of cookbooks for a particular team. So there is a policy file in Chef repo where you would specify which are the cookbooks and recipes that you want to run for a particular team or a particular group of users. And so each cookbook, like I said before, they can have multiple recipes, and each recipe would have multiple resources. So what you see here on the screen is an example of a recipe. This is a recipe to configure a Windows node. And the recipes, like I said before, recipe is a collection of resources, and resources are Chef abstractions. So here you see 4 resources, right? You have a resource to configure screensaver setting, and then you have a resource to do disk encryption and set password policy, etc. So for example, the first resource, right, desktop screensaver resource. So what it does is it sets the idle timeout to 10 minutes, after which the user would need to enter the password to log in. It's very self-evident, right? It's very readable, and all you need to do is you need to pass a few parameters to set the screensaver setting, and all the commands and underlying tasks which need to be performed to actually configure the setting on your node, that is figured out and taken care of by Chef. And then it's not just configuring your devices. You can use Chef to even achieve compliance as code. So you can write compliance checks. Like in this example, what we see is we are setting in the previous example, we had set the screensaver timeout to 10 minutes. In this compliance as code example, we are checking if the screensaver timeout is actually set to 10 minutes or not. So when you run these compliance checks on your fleet, if the devices are configured to any screensaver timeout apart from 10 minutes, then the compliance check would fail. And you would be able to even see that on a dashboard. And our dashboards can even show you why a particular compliance check failed. And even writing these compliance checks is something that you don't have to do it on your own. There are CIS and STIG benchmark profiles provided as part of Chef Premium content. So you can use them as it is to perform compliance checks, or you can even write your own compliance profiles as per your organization needs, or you can use these Chef provide content and you can edit them and repurpose them to suit your needs. So let me take you through a use case where you can use Chef to configure different teams in the organization, right? So let's just say an organization has, needs to have some base configurations for all its employees. So, setting screensaver timeout and disk encryption, and you may want to turn on the firewall, install a particular Chrome version, and install Microsoft Office for all the employees in the organization. And then there are some team specific configuration also to be performed. Like there are usually different teams like HR, finance, and engineering. So in addition to the base configurations, they would need, probably HR would need an employee engagement tool, and then finance would need a payroll service, and engineering would need, Git and VS Code to write their code and stuff like that, right? So drilling down further, right? Again, engineering teams can have sub teams like backend team and front end team who have different needs. Backend team would need different tools like say Docker and Python, and then front end team would need different tools like Node.js or Angular, right? So zooming in on the right hand side of the chart, right? So we can see here that all the the entire engineering team would get the base configurations, and then the engineering team would branch out to backend and front end teams. So how do you configure this, right? So I'm just going to take you through this use case, but there is also going to be a demo which would show you how this use case would play out. So how would the cookbook setup look like for this organization? So there would be some cookbooks that you would set to configure the base configurations. And let's just say we have a desktop config cookbook. So desktop config cookbook is usually the premium content cookbook that Chef provides, which has the most common endpoint management use cases, using which you can quickly get started with Chef to manage your endpoints. And most of the things that we have for base configurations are there in our premium content cookbook. And then if there are any additional configurations, you can use supermarket cookbooks. So what are these supermarket cookbooks, right? Supermarket is where our community content is available. So you don't have to write a new cookbook on your own for use cases which are already defined in these supermarket cookbooks. So you can do your base configurations with that. And then you have a custom cookbook, which has multiple recipes. It has a recipe for backend team, front-end team, and then a recipe for the entire engineering team, right? So how would we define which are the recipes and cookbooks which go for different organizations? So like I said before, policy file is where you define which are the, or where you specify which are the cookbooks and recipes that you want to run on your different user groups and teams, right? So you would have a base policy file which would run cookbooks and recipes to perform some base configurations as mentioned here. And then you would have a policy file for the engineering team, which would include the policy file for the base team, plus run the engineering team recipe, right? And then similarly for the backend and front-end team, it would include the backend team policy file, and the front-end team policy file would include the policy file for engineering team, plus backend specific configuration recipe and front-end specific configuration recipe. So you can see here in this example, right, there is a lot of things that you can reuse. So if you want to configure some configurations on your backend team devices, you don't have to write everything from scratch from the base configurations and then the general engineering specific configurations like GitHub, Firefox, and VS Code, and then configure Docker and Python. So you can reuse stuff that you have before, but when you do it with scripts, you have to when you do it with scripts that you upload through MDM, there's a lot of repetitive work that goes in there. So I will let Rishi take on from here, who will take you through the demo for this use case.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chatra. So as you know already, that policy groups are where all our endpoints are added, and then we have policies that would apply certain configurations through cookbooks or that you get from supermarket or from GitHub, from whatever the community has published online. And then we have our premium content as well for configuration of our laptops, and then inspect profiles that would check for compliance. And then we have remediation content as well as part of our premium content that you get. So in this demo, we'll walk through how the code would look like if we were to configure these endpoints using the example that Chatra gave us just a while ago, right? So you can see this dashboard and the logs with some of the policies that have been updated, and there are some nodes that ran a few minutes ago. So we'll just take this one node and see what happened during the client run. So we can see the policy name was the engineering team. So it's not currently given to any of the teams like backend or front end team, and it's already configured with Chef client. So Chef client is going to run every 30 minutes, and we have Chocolatey installed, Google Chrome is installed, Git has been installed, and then there's Firefox. So all of these configurations have already been done, right? So whenever anybody opens the laptop and they just start off, they don't need to configure anything. You've just already installed everything. So let's see how it looks in code. So this is the Chef repo, and with all the stuff like cookbooks and inspect profiles and policy files, right? And this is how the engineering team policy looks like. So we have the cookbooks from our supermarket, Git, Firefox, and VS Code, and then we have our own custom cookbook that defines the engineering team and the backend recipes. And then there's the space where we inherit from. And as expected, base has desktop config, and then Chrome as default because all the laptops need at least Chrome. And then we have compliance phase turn to true. We'll talk more about it later on, but for now, we'll just go through all these policies and see what's what. So now let's go to the cookbooks directory. And as you can see, we have the desktop config that we get from Chef team as part of premium content. And then this is custom cookbook that we wrote, which is having the recipes as we needed. And we just included the default that comes with the cookbook, right? And then there's this configuration for backend, which iterates over all the packages, and those come from attributes. So in the attributes file, we just define, these are all the packages based on the team ID. So whenever the cookbook will run, the recipe will run, it will just install all of them. And then there's the front end configuration. So all of these are separate, and let's see how it looks like on the front end team's laptop, right? So going over to the launchpad, you can see the applications were installed once the cookbook was run, and Chrome is installed. They don't need to do anything. It's brand new. They just open whatever they want, and it's good to go, right? And then we installed Node as well. So we'll just check it with Node-V, and it should already be there. So it's just like we give them the laptop and they're good to go, right? So coming back to the compliance part. So this was all about, how we could quickly configure this. Now on the policy file, we saw that there was base Windows and base OS X as well. And the compliance phase was just, turned on here on the base.rb. So how does it actually work? So we added some remediation cookbooks. This is also as part of our premium content. And then we added some of the things that are platform specific, like the homebrew cookbook. And then we just copied over the remediation cookbook. So whatever we get from Chef as part of the premium content, we just copy it over and then add the profile to the attributes. And this inspect profile also is part of our premium content. So we just copy it over to inspect. So we don't need to do anything. We just take the archive, unzip it, copy paste it, and we are done. It's as simple as it gets, right? So back in our dashboard, when we have run this and we have uploaded all the profiles, we would be able to see that the nodes run the compliance tests, right? So in this one, you can see it says system is not compliant because we gave all the inspect profiles, but we remediated just some of them. So you could see some of them have been fixed. They come with a blue check mark, and the ones that weren't fixed show a red triangle there, right? And the Chef client run still shows us all the remediation cookbooks that it ran, and we can just see what changed and what didn't. So this is the run where it did have change, and it also ran the remediation runner. But if there's no change, it would just say, unchanged, and all the things were as it is. So that's pretty much it. We don't need to do much. Like, with just a couple of lines, we have managed n number of nodes without any issue, and we just didn't have to do anything. It's just copy paste a bunch of stuff, and that's it. So yeah, that's it for the demo, and I'll hand it over to Chaitra.
Thanks, Rishi. So you have a poll question coming your way. So I would request you to provide your responses. So we have spoken about different aspects of managing endpoints and why use MDMs and UEMs to manage endpoints, right? And then what is the benefit of managing your endpoint status code in addition to managing your core tasks with the MDMs, right? And Rishi even walked you through a demo of how you can use Chef to manage your endpoint status code. So where does Chef fit into desktop management, right? Chef Desktop was a product offering that was launched early last year. And even before this product was formally launched, some of our customers were using Chef to manage their large fleet of devices, tens and thousands of devices with a small team of 2 or 3. And they were able to do this because they were managing their endpoint status code. So, Chef is essentially the same tools and processes that you would use to configure and manage your automate your server configuration. And Chef has proven itself from a few years in the DevOps space. And it was only logical to extend Chef to manage your endpoint and laptop fleet as well. So because you can drive efficiency through automation, right? That's how our customers have been managing hundreds and thousands of devices with Chef. With most of the processes automated, there is very little manual task left, making the teams very productive and efficient. And then you can gain control over IT resources, right? You have with Chef, you have visibility over your large fleet of devices, irrespective of the operating system. And then Chef provides code abstractions using which you can easily manage your endpoint status code. In fact, Chef goes one step ahead, where you can use the same resource to manage your endpoints in Mac, Windows, or Linux. For example, if you want to create a file and there is a resource to create a file, you just need to pass a few parameters, and then Chef would figure out how it needs to create a file in Mac, Windows, or Linux. Right. That's where Chef does very well. And then in addition to managing your endpoints, Chef also provides compliance capabilities. It helps to reduce security risks, and it helps to maintain continuous compliance. And even it is able to automatically remediate any issues, any compliance issues on your fleet. So like I said before, right, driving efficiency through automation. So automation, you can do automation via code, but you don't have to write a lot of code, because Chef comes with premium content, and this premium content cookbook contains most common endpoint management use cases that you can easily and quickly get started with by using this cookbook. And then a Chef manages a large fleet of devices with different operating systems. And Chef resources, right? Chef abstractions are called resources. These come not just in the form of Ruby DSL. You can even leverage, you can write them in YAML as well, like you can see here on the screen. And Chef automatically corrects configuration drifts, right? So when you, once you have your Chef client installed on your fleet, then you can actually configure these Chef clients to run every few hours or every few days, whatever frequency you choose, right? So in case there is a configuration which changed over a period of time, Then the next time chef client runs, it would pull the original cookbook from the infra server, and it would apply these configurations onto the fleet, bring the device back to the desired state. So it provides a lot of flexibility to even perform custom configuration, since you're handling everything with code. And then Chef provides a visibility layer using which you can find out all the total number of laptops that have checked in, a number of devices which did not check in. And you can also find out the check-in history for a particular laptop over a period of time, right? And you can even find out the time since last check-in, and you can even drill down further and see what are the different configurations that are applied or run on a particular node, how many which of those configurations were successfully applied and which of those configurations failed. And then you can even look at individual device attributes, like you can find a kernel version, you can find a OS version, the a version of the chef client that was run on the device, and you can get all sorts of details on the visibility layer, irrespective of the operating system, whether it is Mac, Linux, or Windows. You can get visibility for all your operating systems on a single dashboard layer. And then Chef comes with compliance capabilities, right? So it provides a premium content in the form of CIS or stick benchmark, using which you can run compliance checks on your fleet, or you can even write your own compliance tests to run compliance. You can even, use the CIS benchmarks. You can use a combination of CIS benchmarks provided by Chef and your own custom compliance tests. And in the premium content, it's not just audit, you even get remediation content. So that you can automatically remediate your non-compliant fleet as well. So why manage desktops with or laptops with Chef? So what is it that Chef brings to the plate, right? So you can do more with less. You can manage thousands of devices with just a small team of 2 to 3. Because everything is automated and there is very little scope for mistake. All the manual tasks are automated. There is, little chance to perform, to end up with human errors. And this would also end up with less tickets, and you would end up spending less time catering to these ad hoc tickets, right? And then you can achieve continuous compliance and remediate your non-compliant devices as well. And all changes are tracked. So every change that you make, right from the time that you create a cookbook, you create a recipe, and any changes that you make into your cookbook, everything is tracked. So there's always information on when a change was made, who made that change, and why that change was made, and what that change was made. So which makes debugging and finding out the root cause of issues very easy, and teams can spend less time in fixing issues. And finally, Chef is not just a tool that you could use to manage your endpoint status code. You can even you can use it to achieve continuous compliance and remediation with Chef. So yeah, before I go to the Q&A, there's another poll question coming your way. I would request you to provide your responses. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to post your questions.
Thank you, Chaitra, and thanks everyone. I mean, there are a few questions that have come in, so maybe we'll get started with that. But while we answer these, if there are more questions that you have, do feel free to put them into the Q&A box there, and we'll try and answer them as well, right? So the first one is, scripts also do away with GUI-based tasks. So what is the advantage of Chef cookbooks over scripts? It's a good one.
Yeah, so this is a good one, right? So yeah, essentially you can use scripts to automate your endpoint management tasks, right? But then scripts can be really complex and really lengthy, and you would need to have people with different kinds of expertise to write scripts. You would need to write PowerShell scripts for Windows, and then you would need to write Bash scripts for Mac. And also scripts, as your organization scale and you have more and more business functions, if you have to perform a lot of custom configurations, these scripts can get really complex. And if there's a new person joining in the team, or if the person who has written the script is on leave or he leaves the organization, then it would be very difficult for the rest of the team to decipher what exactly these scripts do. Right. And then the main thing is there is no standard way to manage or maintain these scripts. Currently, what most of the people do is they upload these scripts onto the MDM from where these scripts are deployed, or they are saved in a like shared folder from where people use these scripts, right? So there is no standard way of maintaining or managing these scripts. So it's very difficult to track what are the changes which are done by scripts. And sometimes when there are ad hoc tickets or requests from different employees, IT teams tend to quickly run some scripts via terminal to fix those issues. So and if in case those ad hoc scripts that you run via terminal cause some issue which you're not aware of, and later sometime when you face the consequence of that issue, going back and finding out what exactly caused this issue would be a problem. Whereas in Chef, since you follow a software development lifecycle process, every code change that you do would be reviewed, and it would be you would be pushing it to source code management repository, right? So every change that you do is tracked. So in case of any issues, it's very easy to find out what is the issue, and you can easily roll back changes as well. So that is the advantage of using Chef, right? You can actually manage your endpoint status code in a very seamless manner.
Great, and that also talks a little bit about policy as code and the way you would implement policy using code as well, right? But again, that's maybe a different conversation. But sure, sorry. Chaitra.
Yeah, that is, yes, that's the additional benefit, right? With Chef, you not just manage your endpoint configurations and manage different, configuring settings and stuff, but you can also achieve continuous compliance also as code. And, writing these compliance checks are again very easy with the premium content and the community content that you can get to leverage.
Great. The next one is, what can Chef be used for small fleet of devices? I think the question is, what is that? What is a number where you start considering, or the size of the fleet where you start considering Chef as an alternative?
Yeah, so Chef can be used for a fleet of any size, right? You can manage a small fleet of devices, you can manage a large fleet of devices. So the advantage with Chef is, even if you have started using Chef to manage a small fleet of devices, if your organization scales and you end up having more laptops and desktops in your fleet, nothing changes from how you manage your endpoints, right? The processes and the cookbooks that you use, you would continue to use the same, and probably you would just add more configuration set, and nothing would change. The same size of the same team size can continue managing, tens and thousands of devices. So the number really doesn't matter with Chef. So it's very, it's very seamlessly you can scale using Chef.
Great. So the next one is, are the recipes you write different for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, right? Would there be any differences? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so this is a good question, right? So actually, Chef is basically, Ruby underneath it. And we've written Ruby DSL on top of it with code abstractions, which you can use off the bat. So these code abstractions or resources that you use would be the same, whether you use it for Windows, Mac, or Linux. Of course, for certain use cases, there may be, Mac specific resources and Linux specific resources or Windows specific resources. Like, for example, if you want to perform disk encryption, then it would be, you'll be using the underlying utility that is being used in Mac and Windows would be different. So in such a case, there could be, two different resources that you would be using to configure this on the different operating systems. But then the pattern, right? The pattern would be the same. So nothing changes from that perspective. The expertise would be the same. You would, if you can understand Ruby DSL for managing Windows, you can understand for Windows as well. So, but again, resources like creating file directory, these things would be common irrespective of the operating system. So yeah.
Got it. The next one, and please keep your questions coming in. as we will try and answer them as well, right? So the next one, is the YAML support also there for writing compliance checks?
Yeah, so as of today, we don't have YAML support for writing compliance checks, but then like we showed you in the demo, writing compliance profile, like if you want to write your own compliance tests, they can be written in the form of Ruby specs, which are very easy to write and read. You just compare, you check whether, certain setting is set to a certain value. So it's very easy to read and write. So yeah, it should not be a problem.
Got it. Great. So I think those were the questions, but maybe we want to go and take a look at, what the polls look like, right? So could we have the results of the first poll up, please? Well, we asked, how do you manage your scripts? And it looks like GitHub or a source code management repository is one, or the preferred way. The other one is we put it in a shared folder. Well, that seems like a little bit of a problem. But Chaitra, thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is interesting. Yeah, that people are using source code management repositories to manage their scripts.
Right, and I think the other one is the 40% that said, hey,
yeah,
we put it in shared folders. You might have a problem as you scale, because quite honestly, maintainability of those scripts, visibility of what scripts are being used for what kind of problems, those are issues that will start to show up as the fleet size grows and as your IT team scales as well, right? Then one would potentially not know what someone else has written up in a script that's in that folder. So something to think about.
Yeah, I think
right.
the order would be lost
Sorry.
there, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. Could we have the results for the second poll, please? This is pretty much even Stevens. How much of your workflows are in scripts versus GUIs? Well, it looks like, well, 75% of scripts and at least 25% and upward are in in scripts. It's quite a bit of scripting there. And therefore the question, and if you were to actually extrapolate this with the previous results, you're going to have upwards of 25% of your scripts in folders or significantly in folders, then you're going to have a problem. But Chaitra, sorry, you had comments here.
Yeah, I think that's where, right? So that's where I was mentioning. So there are a lot of features which are not available out of the box in MDM. So many IT teams resort to scripting. So I think this poll really answers that, right? That's why we have 25% and upwards of their endpoint management workflows in scripts. So yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Great. So why don't we have the third result up for the third poll? Are you able to maintain your endpoints in a desired state? How are you doing it today? Well, we're able to achieve desired state only partially, right? And that's the majority of the answers. So either they're not monitoring, their end state well, or they're not able to, or they're only able to do it partially, which does not really bode well for any compliance measure or any audits that you might have to do on a fairly regular basis. But Chaitra, thoughts?
Yeah, so this is where Chef plays, right? So with Chef clients, running at periodic intervals as small as every 30 minutes, you can ensure that and your entire fleet is always in the desired state, right? So even in that 30-minute gap, if there is something that has drifted, a Chef checks that and ensures that it is configured to the desired state, so that your fleet is always compliant.
Great. Thank you, Chaitra. So with that, I think we'll call it a day on this webinar. Thank you so very much for your time today. If you have questions, do feel free to keep them coming, and we'll reach out to you post the webinar and try and answer those questions as well. With that said, I'd like to thank Chaitra and Rishi for their time today on the webinar, and each one of you for attending. Riza, with that, over to you.
Thank you, Sudeep. Thanks, Chaitra and Rishi. That was a great webinar. Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. If you like what you saw, we encourage you to share it with your teammates and professional network. We will share the on-demand version with you very soon. We will email it to you as soon as it's ready. And you should be able to access it using the same audience link that you're using now. With that, thank you again and have a great day, everyone. Bye.